name is Denise Pohl, and I have been at SAS since 1983, a long time ago. And over the years, I have worked in host-level code, core-level code, PROC code, and now I work on the CAS server. And I work on the CAS server on server-side parts of the CAS server. And I also work with the SAS client, which would be considered client-side, on statements and procedures that interact with the CAS server.
Great. Can you describe for us, a lot of our users are not familiar with PROC CAS and the CASL language. Maybe at a high level, can you describe what that is?
Sure. The CASL language is what we call a language specification. So it's very similar to the SAS language. It has statements, it has functions, it has the ability to do loops, it has the ability to do user-written functions. So then the next question is, well, I have this language called CASL. Why do I have it? What do I use it with? So the answer to that would be is you use the CASL language as a framework to send what we call actions or requests to the CAS server. Now the CAS server is a server that's distributed, multi-processing, capable of doing a great deal of work because of the threading, the processing, etc. So the idea is that you could be in the SAS client, you could run PROC CAS saying, I want you to do this piece of work, say a summary. I want this to be the input data, I want this to be the output data, and I want you to send the results back to the SAS client. And at that point in time, with the CASL language, I want to operate on, say, that object of results that comes back, which could be 3 tables, it could be 4 tables, it could be just simply one piece of data. And at that point in time, I want to use an if statement to look at a specific value that was returned in order to make a decision to run another action using the value that was returned, and I can substitute it. So the CASL language would allow you to kind of do what old school PROC Print 2 did. This concept of run an action, get a result, and you have total control with the CASL language about how to interrogate that result. You can use macro with the CASL language, and that would allow you to maybe move on to what we call pipelining. I've run one action, I've looked at some things, now I want to run another action with substitution or set some macros, because at that point in time I could continue to run actions with the CAS server, or I could do a data step on the SAS client, only then to feed another action into the server. Pipelining, one action, munge the results, another action, munge the results.
A lot of our users just use data step and procs in Display Manager as an example client. Can you describe how they would be able to use PROC CAS and the CASL language in that environment?
The first thing they would do is they would use the CAS statement, and the CAS statement would allow them to make a connection to the CAS server. Once they've made a connection to the CAS server, then they could, depending on where their data is, they would have to identify if their data is on the server side or the client side. They could use PROC CAS UTIL, which would allow them to take data from the server side and put it on the client, or the data from the client side and put it on the server side. Or it could be something as simple as a data step, with a data and a set statement to move data from the client to the server. Then you'd be in a position to say, I would like to run PROC CAS, I would like to do a summary action, I would like the summary action to operate on this data, and then I would get a result back. So there would be this familiarity that you would still be getting results back to the log, you'd be getting a note that said, where did it run, those kinds of things.
I sense that the theme of the conference, some of the stuff that Oliver talks about, talks in terms of AI and deep learning and things that is new to us. How would a SAS programmer, dataset PROC programmer, utilize PROC CAS, as an example, in the CASL language to tap into the newer AI technologies?
Well, we talked a little bit about the fact that these AI technologies really are just running actions surrounded by CASL code. So it's how they have put the actions together. It's how they've accessed streaming data. So these actions and results are the most basic components. If you're used to doing a data step in PROCs, then you're used to doing things at that level. You're used to being very explicit, as opposed to a product like VA, where everything's kind of hidden from you. You're doing that point and select kind of thing. So I think it would just be a matter of having examples. You would need an example that said, let's identify the data, let's run PROC CAS. Here's the action. All the actions have a name and parameters. The parameters are usually identifying the input and the output, and then they can have a significant section where they're giving you that information on what to do with that input and output. But it's very, very basic and common syntax that's similar to the SAS language. The person who wrote CASL is a longtime developer at SAS and wrote it with the concept of, we don't want anyone to have to learn anything new. We want these concepts to be transferable.
You know, a lot of introduction of what our team has to AI and deep learning is using the visual analytics as the front end. Can you describe how PROC CAS and using the CASL language to be able to capture some of the actions, accessed through VA?
So if you were running VA and you were running VA with your user ID, you could run some jobs, and then you could start up a DMS. You could connect to the same server with that same user ID. And then you could use the CAS statement to say, please list all my sessions that are running on this server associated with my user ID. You could identify the VA session. At that point in time, you could make a connection to that VA session. Multiple clients can connect to the same session. And then you could do something called list history on the CAS statement. And with list history, by default, I think it shows you the last 10 actions. But there's also a parameter there that would allow you to see the last 200 actions that had been submitted. That would allow you to see what VA had submitted in that explicit action syntax. That action syntax could then be copied and reused in PROC CAS from your SAS client, your DMS.
That's great. We like the little SAS book as a way of finding examples to learn data step. Do you know what documentation is available to learn more about PROC CAS and the whole CASL language?
Yeah, and that's something that I'm just walking into because coming here to Global Forum, I was trying to gather a lot of examples. So I'm not finding enough examples on the CASL language that we have published or that are in blogs. Now, it may be possible that I haven't looked in the proper places, but this is a topic that several of us from various groups have gotten together at the Institute to try to identify what do we need to give people. And I think one of the things I'm going to champion when I return to the Institute is examples, similar to the Little Book of CASL.
Okay.
Can we have a Little Book of CASL? Can we at least have something online with a multitude of examples? That could start out as 10 simple examples. It could also be an example of what I've just described, the ability to trap your actions. And some of those things. So I think we need to build, because we're hearing here at Global Forum that people want to be able to use the CAS server. They want to understand what's going on. And if you're used to using the data step and procs, that's the world you work in. You want that explicitness.